Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Mark Sikes, a casting director in Los Angeles, California. I've been casting for 23 years. Began casting for Roger Corman at Concord New Horizons in 1992. I arrived from Massachusetts in January. I think the date was January 7th, 1992. And 1 year to the day, I was given my first feature film to be the casting director on. So it was a good anniversary.
Recently, you've added producer to your resume. Can you tell us why you decided to expand?
Well, about 10 years ago, I accepted my first producing credit on a film, and then I got another one, and I produced a couple web series. But I was finding back then that casting directors were getting producer credits in lieu of their full salary. And while I enjoyed the producing credit, I wasn't actually a vested producer, and I found I wasn't learning what I wanted to learn as a producer. And so I found people that wanted to make movies, the documentary Doomed, several other feature films, narratives, and that would allow me the opportunity to actually be a hands-on producer. There's a film on the Sci-Fi Channel right now, The Burning Dead, starring Danny Trejo, and I'm a co-producer on that. And I was on the set every day, and I was the first person there and the last person to leave, and I did what was needed, and of course I worked a little more with the cast and was a presence on set, but I also, if we needed something cleaned, we cleaned it. It was a shoestring budget and a small skeleton crew. And I remember one time Danny Trejo arrived, and I noticed there's only Sanka, and I'm not going to give Danny Trejo Sanka. So I got in the car and I drove down the Tahunga road there and got coffee at Starbucks. And, and of course, I did get to learn, being on set 24/7, I did get to learn the hands-on stuff with producing, the budget, the paperwork, the crew, as well as the cast. And I found that I've worked with a lot of great crew people, and so on several recent films that I produced, I was responsible for bringing on key crew, people that I knew could work within a certain budget. So when Marty Langford called me up a few years ago and said, I want to do a documentary on Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, I was very excited to produce it. There really wasn't casting. I simply had to call up the interview subjects to see if they would agree to be on camera. But then we really had to produce it. We had to raise money. We had to do all these things, and I found it very rewarding. It's really enjoyable to see a film from its inception through the scripts, the casting. I love, of course. I'll always want to cast my projects. Shooting. I love being on the set. I might even love being on set slightly more than being in the casting office, because I just love the energy on a set, whether it's a documentary, whether it's a narrative film, a horror film, a kids film, I don't care. Being on the set when they're shooting and making things happen is the ultimate thrill to me. So I love that, and I like that, and I don't want to just be a casting director visiting the set and sort of feeling guilty eating and having craft service when you're not really working that day. I want to be there and belong there and be someone answering questions and helping to solve problems on a daily basis. And the beautiful thing is, with lower budget films like we do, I can still do 5-6 movies a year as a casting director and also produce a couple of them. And it's just been so much fun. I wish I'd done it all along.
Tell us about your new documentary, Doomed, and why actors have been so interested in seeing the film.
Well, Doomed is a fascinating story, more so to actors than anyone else, but I think the average person walking down the street that has no interest in comic books or Roger Corman or even movie stories, I think there's a fascinating story here. There is a unique story here. The circumstances of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four are unique. There are similar stories, but for the reasons and the way this happened, this is a one-of-a-kind story. And I say it in the documentary. How many movies did Roger Corman make and never release? One. And this is it. And he's made 500 films. So this movie, back in 1992, I was working for Corman as a receptionist. And as is the way when you work for Roger, you often wear several hats. And I was the receptionist and the projectionist, and I handled the mail and the internship program. And I also got the opportunity to work as Laura Schiff's casting assistant. And they came to me and showed me a script for the Fantastic Four, and I was just beside myself. I thought this was the most interesting. I never thought I would get to work on a film like that while working for Roger, because that's a superhero team book. They've all got superpowers. So there was obviously, even from the beginning, some question of what this was going to look like. But it was a co-production. New Constantine Films, Bernd Eichinger, was co-producing and bringing in money and bringing in the option for Fantastic Four that was about to expire in December 1992. And he would lose hundreds of thousands of dollars if he couldn't start shooting by the end of December 1992. He'd been trying, I guess the estimate is about 5 years. He'd been shopping it all over Hollywood, trying to get a big budget version going. Nobody would bite, so he ended up, rather than lose all the money he'd invested in the option, he came to Roger Corman and said, "Can you go into production on this by the end of the year?" Which at the time, I think Roger remembered it as September 92. So he had to go into production in just 2 or 3 months, which meant there was no script, meant writing it, casting it, and rolling film to preserve New Constantine's option. Now, at the time, no one considered, to my knowledge, that simply by renewing the option and shooting the film, the rights were maintained by New Constantine, and so there was really no need to release the film. And what unfolded was a very interesting, circuitous story from different people who say different things about it now, who knew what, when they knew it, and how this movie ultimately, Avi Arad came in, looked at the film and said, we're shelving it. You're never going to release it. I'm going to buy out Roger Corman. I'm going to buy out Bernd Eichinger. And I'm going to take the film and I'm going to burn it. And what he thought was the only copy, he says he burned 20 years ago. But unbeknownst to him, a really, really slick dupe had made it out into somewhere, and it ended up at comic book conventions, and it kept getting duped more and more, and the generations were worse and worse, but nice copies were still in circulation, and so it was bootlegged all over. In the 90s, you could find it at comic book conventions all over the world, and ultimately with the onset of YouTube, you can now watch Roger Corman's The Fantastic Four, a medium quality copy of it on YouTube, 90 minutes long, and see the film that was never supposed to be seen. But it's never been released legally, and that is a story unto itself, and that's the story we wanted to tell.
What got the ball rolling on Doomed?
The phone call from Marty, maybe 3-4 years ago, he had originally wanted to do a book, and he called me up to write the chapter on casting. And I said, love to, sure, why not? And then he thought about it, and he credits me, even though I didn't remember it this way, but a few weeks ago when we were at Comic-Con, he reminded me, he said, you talked me into making the movie and directing the movie. And I'm like, well, all right, you're welcome, that's great. But it was very cinematic. This is a story that didn't just belong in a book as far as I was concerned. It belonged as a movie. But I wasn't for 20 years sitting there thinking about it. I really have to say, and this is just the plain truth, Marty Langford is the reason this documentary exists. I never would have made this documentary on my own. I love the story, and I'm glad we did it now. And looking back, probably should have told this story. But when he came forward, he was this ball of energy and passion. He's one of the guys who went to all the comic book conventions in the 90s to find the best quality bootleg of this film. I believe at one time he owned 17 VHS tapes of the Fantastic Four and knew exactly which generation each was. And I'll tell you, from doing this documentary, I've met a lot of other people who did the same thing. This was, I don't know, it was this cool, not so well-known bootleg out there. It grew in popularity over the 20 years, but back in like 1997, 1998, there were still a lot of people who didn't know it existed. Hell, the cast didn't even know the bootleg was at comic book conventions. And they talk about it in the documentary because people would come to them and go, I saw you in the Fantastic Four. And they'd say, that movie wasn't released. And they're like, yeah, I bought it at the comic book convention for $10. Want a copy of it? And a couple of the cast members got their copy of the movie from Boots. You know, and that's the thing. You know, I talk about this movie very passionately as a casting director. I have a lot of friends who are actors, and I care about actors. And while nothing criminal was done, the thing people don't stop and think about when a film doesn't get released, a narrative film, there's no residuals, ever. They get their base rate pay that they got for shooting that day, and they'll never see another dime of it. And in a case like this, people were not given even demo footage for their reels, which wouldn't have hurt anybody. So the actors really didn't do well, and as you can see in the documentary, they tell their story, and many of them even went into their own pockets back in 1993 when the movie was about to be released and everyone thought it was going to be released. Actors were flying around the country and paying their own airfare to sign pictures at comic book conventions to help promote the movie, like you would do for a studio film. You're out there they created their own junket. And they're out there on their own dime, so that when this film then didn't get released, I don't even want to think about how much was lost by these actors who, of course, they had something to gain by the publicity, but normally that stuff is all paid for by the producers and the studio making the film. On a low-budget film, it doesn't happen that way.
Where can we find more information about Doomed, including upcoming showings?
We have a website, doomthemovie.com, and we're constantly, daily posting things on the Doomed Facebook page. We make an effort to have something up there every day, whether it's a cast member. I think today is Rebecca Staub's birthday, who played the Invisible Woman, so we'll post something lovely for her this afternoon. But we have a big announcement coming up about distribution within the next week. We post about Comic-Con. We have the world theatrical premiere at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica on August 13th with a cast and crew panel. Oli Sassoon is flying in from New Orleans, where he lives now. He was the director of the Fantastic Four, and he's flying in, and he's going to be on the panel, and so is the cast, and I will be there. And we're very excited. We have Jeff Boucher as a moderator for the panel, which should make it a really fun night because he's great and he hasn't really been involved with this so far. So his perspective will be completely fresh.
As a casting director running the auditions and a producer working on set, do you find that an actor's performance changes from the audition to the filming?
Well, I think it depends on the actor because, frankly, I know actors who prepare and come in, and unless they're directed a certain way, they really do a great job of delivering what they did in the room on the set unless asked to do it a different way. And I think that's really important with television too. I have friends who work primarily as television casting, and they say that you want to be able to show us virtually a performance in there. You don't have to have it memorized, but you better really have a character formed and an interesting choice formed. They may change it. They may ask you to do it a little differently or very differently. That's possible. But I think in most cases in television, they want you to bring in people that are going to hit it pretty close to the mark. In film, I think there's a little more flexibility and a little more interpretation, unless it's one of the top people that really want to have a lot of control. A lot of the indie guys, a lot of the people making movies under $5 or $10 million, they're very open. Sometimes they're not even sure with some parts what they're looking for. They're actually looking for actors to come in and make really exciting choices and take a little risk. It's still got to make sense for the story that we're telling, but the audition first read can be a little interesting, and then just be prepared for the note. And I see a lot of people coming in. It's dangerous to audition, get the job, and then go work with your coach without any input from the director or casting about changes to what you did in the room, because they may want you to do exactly what you did in the room, and I would jump to that conclusion if you weren't directed in a violently different direction. So I think it's very ill-advised for it to be too different. You memorize it, you get it down, and you can go further with your commitment to it, of course, but different, that can be a problem. You don't want to show up on the set as if you did an audition and we didn't talk about this.
Has becoming a producer changed what you look for during the audition process?
No, being a casting director and a producer has really not changed one bit for me, because I was always a producer-friendly casting director. And I work for the producer, and I'm very proud to say the majority of producers who've hired me have hired me again and again. And it's because I don't bring people to the set who are going to be high maintenance, who are going to be unprofessional, who are going to be late. I make it very clear that I expect professional behavior. I don't care what celebrities might get away with. We run a tight ship. I've always had a producer's eye in that sense. A great example would be working with kids. A casting director must be able to wear a producer's hat at least some of the time when casting kids. I remember on The Burning Dead, the Danny Trejo film that's on Sci-Fi Channel, we brought kids into the producers at the callbacks, and we'd read them once, and when we were ready to do the adjustment, I'd leave my assistant in the room with the director, and the kid would read, and I would step outside, and I'd go and I'd chat with the parents. Every kid there had a mother or a father or both, and so I just kept slipping out for 5-10 minutes at a pop. As long as the kid was in there, I was talking to parents, trying to see if there was any reason any of these kids might not make the best choice because of other issues. And to me, that's being a producer, but it's also being a really smart casting director. You have to do these things. It isn't just finding the greatest actor imaginable for the part. You might do that on a big film when you're out to names. But when you're casting a movie, especially a film in the $2 to $5 million range or less, these days the budgets are under $1 million much of the time, you're moving fast. You don't have time. I was doing some of the producers' jobs all along. But as a producer, you take on a lot of other technical jobs that have nothing to do with casting. There's a big difference there, but no, I don't think producing hasn't changed me as a casting director or vice versa. I still want to work with great actors with great attitudes who want to work with me again and again and again. I never hire an actor thinking, oh, this will be the only movie we work on. I hire actors thinking we're going to have a long-term association, and I would hope they would think the same way. Sadly, some don't. But if I'm hiring them 2 or 3 times or even auditioning them consistently, it means I want to be in business with them.
How can actors get on your radar?
I'm maybe the easiest person in Hollywood to get on my radar, and it's always shocking to me how little effort so many actors make to get on my radar and stay on my radar. I write the Casting Corner blog on showfax.com now. Coming up in September, it will be 11 years. 4 years ago, and I don't know why it took me so long to do it, but 4 years ago I started a Facebook page supporting the blog because I wanted to add an interactive option for actors to be able to read the blog and then come up on this Facebook page and ask more questions or share their stories or disagree with me. If they can back it up, I'm fine with that. I did this 4 years ago. We have well over 13,000 members now. As long as someone looks on their Facebook page like they're actually an actor and not spam or a credit card scam or anything like that, I accept them into the Casting Corner Facebook page group. And it just amazes me that every Monday morning when we post a new blog and I open a new thread based on that blog's topic, that there aren't 13,000 people up there involved, engaged, chatting, sharing, asking, telling, fighting, arguing, whatever it is. We get a couple hundred quite often. And hey, if you were an actor and you wanted to get to know casting people, Facebook doesn't cost anything. I don't charge people to be in the Casting Corner Facebook group. It's an excellent opportunity to reach out to me. I have a website, marksikes.com. My email is there. All the information is up there. My Twitter feed goes right onto the homepage of my website. I don't know how I can make myself more accessible in terms of literally getting an actor's work on my radar. I mean, I don't want people coming up on the Facebook page and spamming and just dropping off their demo reel or a link to their website. But part of this business, getting on my radar, is also networking. It's understanding that step one isn't me giving you a job. Step one is me saying hello to you and you saying hello to me and us finding out a little more about each other. There's a networking aspect to this that a lot of actors don't want to be bothered with, and a lot of actors end up not succeeding at this business because they, poo-poo Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Yet that's where a lot of the working actors are. In my personal Facebook page, I've got something like 600 working actors and a bunch that are still trying to break in. And it's just as simple as be interesting, have some interesting things to share. It may not be your demo reel. You may be sharing photos or experiences or recipes, whatever you're sharing. Get up there, do your social media, do what you can to help other people, connect people. I've gotten jobs because I put 2 people together who didn't know each other, and they, in turn, helped me. There's so many ways to do this, and you can't do it expecting to score with 300-400 casting directors or 600 agents. You have to pick a small group, and they'll often be picked for you. I'm from Massachusetts. I worked for Roger Corman. I like horror movies. Where do we find some common ground? Where do we connect on some level? When an actor says, hey, I'm from 2 towns over from where you grow up, gets my attention a little. I'm Facebook friends with almost any actor that went to BU because I went to BU. It doesn't get them a job, but it gets them in the wheel. It gets them a little closer, and those really are ways, and I've had so many directors and casting directors and agents back this up over the years. There's so many ways to connect to people that don't involve an audition at first. It leads to the audition, but maybe it's who you're sitting across from at a barbecue. Maybe it's who you're sitting across from at a dinner party. Maybe it's somebody standing in line behind you at Starbucks who's stressed out about their Wi-Fi or something, and you might be able to help them. It's so funny. There's so many ways to chip your way into that. And then once you're on the radar, stay on the radar. Follow up. Stay in touch. If we're Facebook friends, comment. Don't be afraid to share. Ask questions. There's so many things that actors can do. And again, I'm not the only one. There's tons and tons of casting directors and agents and managers up on Facebook now who accept actors in their group because they're teaching a class, they're teaching a seminar, they're writing a book, they have an appearance to publicize. There's so many ways actors and casting directors can interact right now, and never has it been better for actors to be able to one hand washes the other with casting people. And it doesn't cost anything. None of the things I'm talking about cost a dime. It's just consideration and time.
What advice do you have for someone making their first documentary?
I actually, my head in the past 2 years is full of advice for wannabe documentarians, but I would break it down into 2 things. Number 1, make a documentary that you are so passionate about that as long as you finish it and it gets out there, you don't really care about the money. Don't get into documentaries for the money. And don't get into documentaries to get an agent, to get famous, or anything like that, because most documentaries end up on late night cable if they're lucky. They barely get seen because there are studios making documentaries, and those are going to tend to be the ones that end up in theaters and that get the big reviews and the big festival lives. So you have to be doing something. I did Doomed, and from day one, Marty and I said, as long as we bring this to the people and can deliver it to people, we're not going to get rich. I mean, the numbers for a successful documentary are staggeringly low compared to, say, a horror film, which we both, while we want to do another documentary, we both are like, maybe we should do a horror film so we have some money at the end of next year. And the other thing I feel is that once you've accepted you're probably not going to make a lot of money doing documentaries, because most documentarian filmmakers do not make a living at it at all, you still have to pick something, if you can, that people are going to want to see. We must have spoken for a year back and forth before we really committed and said, this is an interesting enough story, and we can get to the people who will help tell it, so that we want to make this, we believe in it. We have Roger Corman's name and his involvement. We have a comic book entity. It kind of is the perfect storm of a documentary. It sort of shouldn't have failed or couldn't fail completely. It had to have some success just because of the comic book fans. And then it was also going out, getting a good DP. This is where I came in very handy. You still have to deliver a good-looking film, because so many documentaries I've seen suffer because they didn't have a budget, but they also didn't have friends who knew how to shoot a film. We didn't have a budget. I don't even want to tell you the budget of Doomed. It was scary low. But I had a guy who I'd worked with as a DP 6 times who was very willing to come in on a documentary and help us out. and was just affordable enough, but he made the film look like we spent 10 times the amount of money on it. So it's got to look good if people are going to buy it and distribute it. Doesn't have to look Hollywood fancy. It's a documentary. But it's got to look clean, and the lighting can't be awful, and that's not really that hard. And your sound's got to be decent. But these are things people can do. You just have to get really talented people who aren't going to cost you a fortune to have your passion just for the couple weeks that they're working on it. And then we were lucky that, Marty wanted to edit it. And so that was sort of a big savings there, and he did a great job.